Hi, this is Trish with Decant Designs, and today we are going to make this Christmas wall hanging. I don't know the name of this pattern, so if anybody knows the name of it, please let me know. I just think it's beautiful and wanted to make it. Come along with me and sew. When you get all of your half square triangles and squares cut out, we'll sew them together, chain piecing. So I will start with the green and gold. There's 4 of those. These are my A and B colors. And next we'll sew the B and C, which is my red and green half square triangles. We'll do 12 of these. Now we'll just snip apart our chain here. After we get these cut apart, we'll press the half square triangles towards the dark fabric. When we say press towards the dark fabric, so I have the point facing towards me and the seam will be facing the dark fabric. And try not to distort. You don't want to like do this stuff with it because it'll distort the seam. And so we'll press them all. I had to come into our spare bedroom to lay it out. My table's just not quite big enough, but here it is all laid out, and now I'm going to sew the rows together. Okay, so I have lined up all my rows and numbered them. I lay each row out in front of my sewing machine to sew it together. Then I'll put it on the back table. And after they're all sewn together, I'll iron them and sew the rows together. We're on the last row to sew together. All the rows are sewn together. And what I do is on the left square of every row, I put a pin in it just to keep myself straight. So now I'm going to iron the seams, one row going left, one row going right, so that they'll nest together when we sew the rows together. One last check before I sew the rows together, make sure nothing's backwards. Looks good. So I'm going to turn this row up, pin these 2 together and sew them. Now for row 3. I'm going to continue sewing the rows together and pressing the seams. And when I get all 8 rows sewn together, I'll show you how to go on to the next step. It's all sewn together. And now I'm going to trim the sides. If there's any to trim, there should be almost nothing to trim off if I did my 1/4 inch seams right. We'll see. Okay, next I'm going to sew this 1.5 inch border on. I'll do the top and bottom and then the sides. I liked the way the last wall hanging turned out using the fusible fleece, so that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to iron on the fusible fleece. Lola's going to help me, like she always does. Next, we'll trim the excess fleece off. I'll do that all the way around. As I was sewing the border on, I decided I'm going to make the binding the same as the border and this outside the gold. I like the way the green and red pop. So I'm going to go ahead and quilt baste this to this white cotton, and I'm going to pin it as well. I will pin every block, I think, just so it stays nice and secure. Just finishing up the pinning. And then I believe I'm going to use my walking foot on my Juki and just sort of do the simple pattern kind of like I did the other day. This one's a little bigger than the other one. Nothing too fancy schmancy. I like it simple. So we'll head over to the sewing machine next. Okay, so I'm going to do some quilting with this walking foot, and I'll record for a little bit, and then I'll finish it up and show you what it looks like when it's done. Next, I'll trim off the excess cotton, and I will iron the binding, and we'll get the binding put on. Okay, I'm going to start the binding. So with the raw edges facing the raw edge of the quilt, I start about halfway down on the side I'm going to start on, and leave about 8 or 10 inches unsewn, and just start sewing 1/4 inch seam. When you get 1/4 inch or so from the corner, pick your foot up, pivot your project, and sew to the corner. Break your thread. At the corner, fold the binding up and fold it down, and just start sewing from the top. When you come around to the last side, this is where you started, this is where you're ending. Lay your binding together. At the top of the binding where you started, mark a 2-inch line. Mark it at the same place here on the top binding where we're ending. Now we'll pick this up, turn it. We'll pick this one up and face this one and put the lines together, and we'll sew right on that line. I've got my lines matched up, and we'll just sew back and forth, taking a back stitch at the start and stop. And when we stretch this out, there we go. It lies perfectly flat. So we can cut off this. Make sure I can see this. Yeah. A little bit of fabric here, leave about 1/4 inch. You can open this up, you can press it with iron if you want to, or finger press it. That friction pins on there, so after I sew it on, I'm gonna get it with the iron real quick. So where we stopped to connect the binding, I'm just gonna start there, do a little back tack. there you have it. Now I'm going to finish sewing the binding on and the wall hanging will be done. This is the finished wall hanging. I love the way it turned out. I hope you love it too. Thanks for sewing with me, everybody. Please like, subscribe, and share my videos. I'd greatly appreciate it.